The rain had been soft at first, like a gentle whisper against the earth, but now it was falling harder, as if the sky had finally cracked open. I was standing at the bus stop, my hands tucked deep into the pockets of my jacket, eyes staring at the empty street. The bus was late again. The sound of the world around me felt muffled, as though the storm had swallowed everything. The only thing I could hear clearly was the soft tap of the rain against the pavement. I wasn't expecting anyone, not really. The streets had been emptier lately, the world feeling heavier with each passing day. My days had blurred together into the same hollow routine. Wake up, work, go home. Try not to remember too much. I was used to the silence, to the distance. But then, as the headlights of the bus finally cut through the downpour, something caught my eye. A small figure huddled near the bench by the stop. It wasn't a person at first, just a shape, a shadow against the gray pavement. But as I stepped closer, I realized it was a dog. A puppy, really. Dirty and soaked to the bone, its fur matted with rain and mud. It shivered beneath a faded scarf, the kind a child might wear. It wasn't a fancy scarf, just a simple thing, threadbare and frayed at the edges. The kind that had clearly seen better days, just like the dog. My heart twisted, but I didn't move. I didn't know what to do. It wasn't my place to care. I hadn't cared in a long time. And yet the dog looked at me then. Those wide, fearful eyes, pleading for something, anything. It wasn't asking for much, just a little warmth, a little kindness. I could have walked away. I should have walked away. But I didn't. I knelt down slowly, the rain soaking through my clothes, and I reached out unsure, cautious. The dog didn't flinch. Instead, it crept closer to me, its little body trembling. I could see now how thin it was, how its ribs pressed against the fur. I didn't have much, but I had a little change in my pocket. I fumbled for it, trying to steady my hands, before I offered it to the dog. It sniffed the coins, confused, before finally licking my fingers. And just like that, I knew I couldn't leave it. I didn't even know if it was a boy or girl. All I knew was that the dog needed me, and for the first time in too long, I realized I needed something too. I picked it up gently, feeling its small, fragile body in my arms. The rain had started to lessen, but the world still felt so heavy, so silent. As I carried the dog home, its little head tucked against my chest, I couldn't help but wonder about its past. How had it ended up here, alone in the rain? Who had cared for it before? Why had they let it go? The questions lingered, unanswered. But I didn't have answers. All I had was the dog, and that was enough for now. The next few days were quiet. The dog, which I'd taken to calling Buddy, settled into my life in ways I hadn't expected. It didn't need much. Just a little food, a warm blanket, and the occasional reassurance that it wasn't alone. But in return, Buddy gave me something I hadn't realized. I was missing companionship. I wasn't used to it. Not anymore. I had spent so many years alone, lost in my grief, that I had forgotten what it was like to care for something. Buddy, with his big, soft eyes and constant wagging tail, reminded me what it meant to be needed. And though I never asked for it, the dog's presence slowly started to heal something inside me. One afternoon, as I sat in the park watching Buddy chase after a stick, I noticed something strange. A little girl had wandered up to me, her eyes locked on the dog. She was shy, hesitant, but there was something in her gaze, something almost hungry. I smiled at her and patted the bench beside me. She sat down, still watching Buddy. "He's a sweet dog," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. "Yeah, he is." And then, for the first time in weeks, the girl spoke again, her words tumbling out like she couldn't hold them back any longer. "I had a dog once. His name was Max. He disappeared." I glanced at her, surprised by the sudden change in her demeanor. Her eyes were wet, tears welling up as she spoke. "I don't know where he went. Mom says he ran away. But I think someone took him. I've been waiting for him to come home." Her words hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just the sadness in her voice, but the way she held it back, like she wasn't sure how to share the weight of her grief. I could see it in her posture, in the way her small hands gripped the edge of the bench. "Maybe he'll come back," I said softly, my voice thick with the kind of sadness I hadn't expected to feel for a stranger's loss. The girl shook her head. "I don't think so, but I hope he does." The silence that followed hung between us, heavy and thick. But Buddy, sensing the moment, trotted over and nudged her hand with his nose. Without thinking, the girl's fingers curled into his fur, and she started to pet him, her face softening. It was then that I saw it, how Buddy had a way of connecting with people, even when they weren't looking for connection. He didn't need to try. It just happened. And as I watched the little girl smile, I realized something that made my chest tighten. Buddy wasn't just healing me. He was healing others too. He was giving back without expecting anything in return. And in a way, it was more than I could ever ask for. Days turned into weeks, and Buddy continued to change things in small ways. I didn't expect it, but he became a part of my routine, my life. And soon enough, I realized something. People, strangers, had started to take notice of him. It wasn't just the girl at the park. I started to see parents and children stopping by, curious, smiling at Buddy. I noticed older people sitting on the benches near the park, watching him play and wag his tail. For some reason, Buddy seemed to bring out the best in people. One morning, as I walked Buddy through the neighborhood, something unusual happened. A man approached me, his eyes darting nervously around before settling on Buddy. I didn't recognize him, but there was something familiar about the way he looked at the dog. He hesitated for a moment, then cleared his throat. "Excuse me," he said, his voice shaky. "Is this your dog?" I nodded. "Yeah, his name's Buddy." The man looked around again, his expression unreadable. But then he seemed to hesitate for a long while, like he was battling with something inside himself. Finally, he took a deep breath and stepped forward, looking straight at Buddy. I think I know where he came from," he said quietly. For a moment, everything felt still. My heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" The man's face softened, as if he was deciding whether or not to continue. I used to know someone. I used to work with someone who had a dog, just like this one. It was his dog." And then, without warning, he took out a crumpled photograph from his jacket pocket. As I looked at the picture, I realized something. The dog in the photo wasn't Buddy, but it might as well have been. Same coat, same eyes, Buddy's eyes. The man explained how he had once worked for a family that had owned Buddy, but the family, it turned out, had fallen on hard times. The wife had died, the husband had spiraled into grief, and the child who had once loved Buddy so fiercely, had been taken away by child services. In the end, Buddy had been left behind, abandoned, forgotten. The man said that he had tried to find the dog, but it was too late. I looked down at Buddy, who had sat quietly through the whole conversation, as if he already knew the truth. His tail thumped softly against the ground, and he licked my hand gently, as if to say it was okay. I realized then that Buddy hadn't just been abandoned. He had been left behind by a family that couldn't hold on to him, a family torn apart by tragedy. But somehow, despite it all, Buddy had found his way to me. And in doing so, he had saved me. The truth about Buddy's past weighed heavily on my heart. I thought I had understood what it meant to feel abandoned. But hearing his story, hearing how he had been left behind just like I had, how he had once been loved by a family that fell apart, made me realize how deep the wounds of loneliness really go. I had been looking for answers in the wrong places, seeking closure for myself, while Buddy had been quietly offering it all along. His presence was more than just the comfort of an animal. It was a lesson in resilience, in second chances. He had come from a broken home, lost in the world, yet here he was, offering love without question, without hesitation. The mornings were quieter now. Buddy's spirit seemed to spread through the house, filling the empty spaces with his energy. And, in a strange way, he made me look at the world differently. People I had once passed by without a second thought now smiled as they saw Buddy and me on our walks. He had a way of pulling out the best in them, making them stop for just a moment and share a kind word. It was a simple thing, but for some reason, it meant everything. One day, as we walked through the park, I saw the little girl again, the one who had spoken about her lost dog. This time, she wasn't alone. She had brought her mother with her, and they both stopped when they saw Buddy. The mother smiled at him, a gentle, knowing smile. "Is that Buddy?" the girl asked, her voice filled with wonder. I nodded, a soft smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. "Yeah, it's him." The girl's eyes shone with something I hadn't seen before, hope. "I'm glad you found him." I felt a lump rise in my throat. I think he found me, and in that moment, it wasn't just Buddy who was healing. It was all of us. A few months later, I found myself standing at the very same bus stop where Buddy and I first met. The sky was different this time, clearer, brighter. The storm that had once seemed so heavy, so relentless, was gone, replaced by a quiet calm. I wasn't sure what had changed, but as I stood there, I felt lighter. Buddy was by my side, his familiar presence grounding me, reminding me that even the toughest storms pass. We had been through so much together, and somehow, we had both come out stronger for it. As I looked down at Buddy, I couldn't help but think about all the lives he had touched. The girl at the park who now smiled more, the elderly man at the cafe who had started talking again after weeks of silence, the nurse at the hospital who said Buddy had made her day brighter with a simple wag of his tail. Buddy had this way of healing people, of showing them that even in the darkest moments, there was still light. I felt something stir inside me. Something warm, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. I had been lost for so long, wrapped in my grief, drowning in my own loneliness. But Buddy had found me. He had come to me when I least expected it, not just as a dog, but as a bridge, one that led me back to the world, back to connection. He had saved me, not with grand gestures or heroic acts, but with something far simpler, his presence. His quiet, unspoken love had filled the cracks in my heart piece by piece until I was whole again. And as I stood there, waiting for the bus to arrive, I realized something profound. Buddy hadn't just needed saving. He had saved me. It was a week later when the police came knocking on my door. I hadn't expected it, not in a million years. I had become used to the quiet routine of life with Buddy, my days filled with walks in the park, visits to the cafe, and the occasional trip to the local pet store. It had been peaceful, comforting even. But then the knock came. I opened to find uniformed officers standing on the other side, their faces serious, yet somehow soft. "Is this your dog?" the officer asked, looking down at Buddy, who was sitting at my feet, tail wagging lazily. I nodded, feeling a strange tension rising in my chest. "Yes, that's Buddy." The officer took a deep breath, glancing at his partner before turning back to me. "We need to talk about where he came from." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. "What do you mean?" "He's just a stray I found. We've been looking for him." The officer interrupted, his voice steady but urgent. "You see, Buddy isn't just any dog. He's been tied to an important case, one we've been investigating for months." I could see that the officers were trying to figure out how to explain something that was clearly complicated, something that I didn't understand, but they didn't need to say much more. The look in their eyes told me everything I needed to know. Buddy was a witness to a crime. The officer continued, voice steady. His previous owner was a fugitive. He's been on the run for a long time now, but it seems Buddy was the one who led us to him. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't know what to say. Buddy, a fugitive's dog. It was a lot to take in. "We've had our eyes on Buddy for some time," the officer said, watching me closely. "And we believe his presence might have been a signal, something that led us to the location where the fugitive had been hiding." I couldn't believe it. Buddy, this small, stray dog who had seemed so ordinary to me, had been part of something much bigger than I had ever known. The fugitive was caught just days later, after Buddy had unknowingly led the officers right to him. It felt surreal, how something so small, so quiet, had played such a big role, and though the case was over and the fugitive was behind bars, something stayed with me long after. It wasn't just the justice that had been served, or the mystery of Buddy's past. It was the realization that Buddy, in his own way, had protected me too. His presence had kept me grounded, helped me find a strength I didn't know I had. The days passed, and as time went on, I found myself back at the park, standing by the same bench where I had first met Buddy. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over everything. It felt peaceful. This quiet, serene moment. Buddy lay beside me, his head resting on my feet as he looked up at me with those same big eyes. I realized, as I looked down at him, that he hadn't just been the one to change my life. He had shown me how to change. The bus pulled up, the headlights cutting through dusk, but I didn't move. I didn't need to. I wasn't waiting for anything anymore. I had everything I needed right here. Buddy had come into my life at just the right moment, when I had no idea that I was ready to heal, to move forward. And now, here we were, at the same bus stop at the same time. Only this time, it wasn't just about waiting for the bus. It was about knowing that, even in the most unexpected places, there could be second chances. And with Buddy by my side, I realized love is found in the quiet moments, in the small acts of kindness, in the animals who choose us when we least expect it. As I look at Buddy now, as I think about how far we've come, I know that every person can make a difference. Every animal can change a life. They may not always be the ones we expect, but they come to us when we need them the most. I encourage you to believe in second chances, in kindness, and in the power of an unexpected connection. Whether it's a stray dog or a forgotten soul, every being deserves love and a home. And if you have the chance, adopt, volunteer, or simply share this story. You never know when your own life might be changed by a small, unassuming act of love. You never know when a stray will come into your life and save you, just as Buddy saved me.